To me, holding on to that element of mystery becomes the challenge in the classroom, and to some extent, making students also aware of that, or at least as I understand it, is also part of what I see as my philosophical mission. I think when Socrates presses people to ask, what do they mean by the virtues of courage or of wisdom or of moderation or of justice, he's asking them to press beyond their comfort zone, their intellectual comfort zones, and try to dig up, sort of almost like pull a crust off the sort of diamond or core of ideas that might be there for them to think and reflect about. And I think the same kind of thing can be done in almost all philosophical endeavors. Whatever we are trying to think philosophically, whatever we are trying to think through critically and find insights and find some core pattern of meaning, if that is possible, even if it's a sort of conflicted situation. I think philosophy has a great deal to offer in that regard. So we've got over here, we've got the argument from evil, and we've got the claim that if there is God, there would be no evil. All right? Well, we know there's what we'll call moral evil, evil caused by humans by humans. All right? So the theodicy, the free will theodicy, attacks that by saying humans, God could have created a world with free beings or without free beings. If he created a world with free beings, he must create a world in which evil is possible. All right? Those beings can choose to do evil. All right? And it's better to have a world with free beings than a world with no free beings. This is a free will theodicy. Is this recognizable? Yeah. Okay. So logically, either beings that are free or beings that are not free, logically, if free, then could do evil. Therefore, in creating free beings, he opens the door for the possibility of evil occurring, and that disarms the argument from evil. God could not create the best world, a world with free beings, and at the same time a world in which there would be no evil, no moral evil occurring in it. That's the argument. Right? Now Drew is responding to that argument. Does this make sense? You see how this is working? Drew is saying, no, God could have created a world with free beings, but a world with beings who are free and, let's say, good-natured, and this would not imply that evil would exist. A world of beings who were free and had good nature would be a world in which there would not be murders and wars and all the other terrible things that human beings do to other human beings. Does that work?
Sorry. I just don't agree with that at all.
Well, that's okay. And guess what? That's philosophy, okay? So why do you disagree? Now, you don't have to apologize for disagreeing with one another, all right? I mean, if you start calling each other names, then yes, you do have to apologize. But you don't have to apologize for disagreeing. So don't be sorry. What's wrong with that?
Okay. Well, if you look at the Adam and Eve argument, I guess it was part of the free will. Was it under free will? Okay.
Adam and Eve
I know that's hard because it's then
can be viewed as a free will. It can also be viewed as a sort of justified punishment theodicy. But go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, but when you look at Adam and Eve, God created them all good, kind of good nature. There's no evil in the world at that point until they, on their own, made the decision or had temptation to go against God, and then they brought evil upon themselves.
What the heart?
Jordan and Andrew. Yeah.
Tying in on that argument though, if God is like all powerful, all creating, and wants good in people, or didn't create free will, then he wouldn't have made the tree or the temptation for them to stray away. So if the existence of if there's no free will, then why would they go towards the tree, or why would God have created the tree to tempt them in the first place?
I mean, maybe we won't be able to know that. Like, why do we think that we have the capability of understanding anything God does? If we can understand what God is doing, how are we any different from Him, thought-wise?
Then that nullifies your argument.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Then that nullifies your argument because you don't have concrete proof of anything. So you're going to say you believe
No, I don't have concrete
you're going to say you believe in something, but you don't have proof of what you believe
I don't
in.
have proof, but you know what? Like, if you look at the definition of faith, that's believing without seeing. If there was something that I could say, oh, that's God right there, then everyone would just be like, oh, there's God. Faith itself, you have to believe without seeing. If you saw it, then where's faith?
Okay, let me just make a distinction here, okay? Because I think what Bonnie is bringing up is, what Bonnie is bringing up is actually a different theodicy, all right? And that is that we can't understand God. God is beyond us. God has His ways. They're not for us to grasp. That's that, okay? That's different than where we were before.
Yeah.
Because where we were before was with this free will theodicy, and we were asking whether it works or not. And we first presented the free will theodicy, and you said, well, that's related to a story of Adam and Eve or whatever, right? So we presented the free will theodicy, and then Drew has a criticism of that. He says, no, the free will theodicy does not work because, in fact, God could have created a world in which human beings or some other creature were free and yet good-natured and therefore not liable to bring about harm and suffering to other human beings.
Is that free will, though?
Back to you. Is it still free will?
Yeah, because it's just free will, but you're not like, you can decide to do something, but you don't even have it in your concept to say like, oh, I want to go kill someone.
But then you're always choosing good, and there's no other option.
Right, but you don't even have like your nature is that's just what you naturally want to do, just because that's your nature. I mean, it's still.
I guess like somebody who's always kind and never vindictive or bad.
I wouldn't say we're born with an evil nature.
But then why do we kill each other?
Because there's things in the world, there's temptation, there's things that you choose otherwise, but I don't think someone who's necessarily, I mean, there's extremes to everything, but doing evil, lying, let's say, even for a small thing, has an evil nature. They could still have a good nature, but choosing to do evil.
But to the argument of free will, you have the choice to choose whether you do right or wrong. So you have free will. You have the choice to do whatever you choose. So it's not a matter of if you're born good or evil. It's a matter of if you're choosing to do, if you believe, like choosing to do something, you have the will to do whatever you choose.
So Jordan, you're rejecting Drew's argument that God could create us both with a good nature and with free will. A good nature that would guarantee that we always would do what was good. You're rejecting that argument.
But see, that's contradicting to me.
Yes, it is a contradiction. I agree. No. They are in a disagreement about that. And so now, again, I mean, the curious thing about this is that we are trying to settle our minds into figuring out what makes sense here, right?
Yeah.
Despite the point you made before, despite the fact that this seems like such an enormous question that it's almost beyond human beings to make sense of it. Yet, human beings facing the problem of suffering, whether it's a crime, whether it's a war, whatever it is, have tried to understand how is this possible if there's an all-good and all-loving God. And so they address the theodicy, like the free will theodicy, and say, well, does that make some sense of this or not? And so we have a contradiction.
if you're religious, you find truth in faith, and if you're more scientific, you find truth in science. And wherever you find that truth is a personal thing. I think if it can be quantified, it's probably, I mean, I think for me at least, that's where I kind of lie, more scientific, because those are the things that we can see and quantify, and those are, for me, those are truth. But at the same time, it's whatever provides truth in your own life, and that's what's important.
So, what is the chief point of this? Well, the chief point is I think always this sort of twofold thing. One is this whole idea of critical thinking and thinking for oneself and reflecting on the concepts and values that you say are important to you in your life. The other is a calling to attention, or calling of one's attention to these larger questions and patterns of human experience and of human culture. And in that way, acquiring a kind of self-knowledge of oneself as a human being. I believe we must become analytical, rational, thoughtful people, and there are skills and tools and methods by which to do that better. And I also think that we, in our span of life here on Earth, owe it to ourselves to try to make sense of it.
Reaffirming is good and questioning is good, so long as, you know, you can find the answers that you're looking for. And, you know, I don't really feel like I would change my religious views just because of this class, to be completely honest.
I had grown up kind of atheistic, agnostic, and gotten saved at 19, and had already gone through a lot of these questions on my path to Christianity on my own. So I'd already dealt with a lot of them before, just dealing with me, never really had to clarify them in front of class or anything like that. But yeah, it's definitely had me question things, and I think questioning things to a certain point, you know, is only good.
All of these questions are things that philosophers engage because human beings, as thinking creatures, engage these questions. We can either be settled with the answers that the various institutions of our society give us, or we can take them on and try to think them through for ourselves, and in conversation and dialogue with others, and remain open to that conversation and dialogue. There is a way in which we can view our very lives as being part not only of the flow of history and the flow of politics and the flow of work and labor and family life and all of that, but as part of a grand conversation that human beings have been engaged in for millennia. And that conversation then is one that changes us potentially, makes us think more, but also makes us, I think, in some strange way, more alive.